Welcome to our second weekend of PXR 2020. PXR is brought to you by Single Thread and Electric Company Theatre. And we are also grateful to our community partners, Toaster Lab, Langara Center for Entertainment Arts, and especially the Canada Council for the Arts Digital Strategy Fund. We'd like to acknowledge that we have organized this event primarily on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam Nations. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Catherine Bourgeois. She's actually waiting for us in the world beyond this one. Catherine is one of the first people who agreed to present at PXR. And I really am excited about the work that she's doing. So this presentation is going to be exploring the parallels between the genre of theater and virtual reality and the dramaturgical journey between them. Catherine is going to speak to the goals, objectives, and experience of creating her mixed reality piece, Violette, as well as the urgent need for and need of diverse groups of creators working in VR and forging paths to develop wider audiences. So I'm going to give you a choice. I'm going to do a belly portal. I don't know if any of you have taken part in a belly portal, or you can go through this teleporter if that does not work for you. So I'm going to, let's see here. Give me 1 second. Bear with me. Let's see.
Oh, this is exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. You'll know that you've done it successfully because there'll be a line extending. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? And if this doesn't work and you're left behind, you can go through the teleporter just to my my left. You're right. Okay, here we go. Over here. Right this way.
I want to do something on the screen. I'll try to take a picture.
Yeah, cool.
You don't hear the noise, do you?
No.
Okay.
Hi, Alex.
Hi. I've done the intro, so once we get everyone over here, we can get started.
Perfect.
Let
So
me know.
are we waiting for more people?
Well, I'm going to double back to presentation A. You're able to hit play on this?
Yeah, I practice and I'm good with it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll just go
Thank
double
you.
back and see if we've missed anyone.
Perfect. Thank you.
I guess James didn't make it or something.
Yeah, Alex went back to go get the stragglers.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. But you can invite anyone who you are friends with that didn't make it. You can invite them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you go to your
Menu
heads-up
people.
display, your menu and your people, and then you can just send them a message that says, "Come visit."
Oh, yeah, okay. That's good to know. There we go.
Yeah, it's pretty handy when you lose people. The only problem is they don't actually port right to you. They port to the spawn point. So you can't
All right.
have them actually come to you and
Right,
where
right.
you're standing. But
It's actually amazing that we haven't had more problems like this with all the porting and jumping around. I mean, like
yeah,
any
it's
conference, the logistics are almost the hardest part, right? Of just getting people.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
but the number of times that I've wanted the schedule and the location in my hand so that I could know. No Oculus. Oh.
Hello.
Oh, he's
Oh.
saying the Quest isn't working. He's saying
Yeah, we're having a
the
couple
port.
technical issues. Sorry about the delay in all of this. We will we will assist you as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. Much love to all. Who loves technology? Throw some hearts up. Isn't everything and every day a learning experience?
Oh
Thanks
yeah.
so much.
Thanks,
We'll
Aiden.
update you as soon as we can. Feel free to mingle, Catherine. I'll speak to you in just a second. Send you a couple messages, and yeah, enjoy the world. Hop around, fall off the edge. It's quite an experience.
Thank
This
you.
is where we need virtual snacks and coffee.
Oh my God. Yeah.
This is where I'd go to the craft table and
Yeah.
get a
that's-
bonbon.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that would be.
Um,
We were talking about it the other day, actually, how fun it could potentially be to, it would be a logistical nightmare, but to like schedule skip the dishes to deliver everyone
Yeah.
a
Right,
packed
you mean?
lunch, right?
You mean?
Yeah.
I have a message
I was
from
actually
Alex
just
that
I was
says
with
like
another
the
guy on
commencer.
Monday who was in a different
So
kind of
okay,
conference, and they
maybe
actually sent
I
him
could
like a package
actually
in a
start.
box, and it had
Yeah.
like
Ok,
the
je
swag,
pourrais,
and it
je
had a
pourrais
couple
commencer
snacks, and it
comme,
was so that when you're zooming,
comme
you could
j'aimais,
actually
mais
okay,
ok,
let's
vas-y.
all
You could
put
actually.
something in.
Ok,
I think
veux-tu
it's
que
so
je,
great.
que je dise
We've
quelque chose
tried
ou
at a couple of different conferences to make shirts for the avatars so that you could
Oh,
wear
cool.
swag or have
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lanyard. But
Sorry,
it's
guys.
like we keep running into platform issues, and then
Right, right, right.
then you gotta like train everyone how to change their avatar and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty. I think there's all kinds of those fun things that we'll be able to try to recapture what
So
it was
this,
like to be in
so this,
person.
like to
Next
be
year.
stupid, this isn't your first virtual like conference. Then this is kind of a thing now. This is
This
my
is
first time, and it's
Oh,
this is
Right.
quickly
to
becoming a thing. Oh, sorry. Yes,
sorry
Catherine.
to interrupt. I had a message from Alex that said that we could maybe we should start. So Aiden, are you in agreement with that?
We have we are receiving conflicting information.
Oh,
We
okay.
might need to reset the world.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
thank you all for your patience. We all got here through a belly portal, and I'm gonna offer that we all go back to presentation room B for a quick second.
There's some cluster
Oh
movers
gosh,
there.
it's
Couldn't
hilarious.
be more
Yes,
on top
I
of
see
each
you
other.
now.
Where are you?
That was. I'm behind you. I'm just
Oh.
trailing behind you.
Hi, Sarah.
Fear of heights.
Hi.
It's hilarious. I guess we're walking towards that screen, huh? Oh my gosh, so funny.
So I guess the different kinds of portals work differently is what that
I don't
means.
think you can follow. You?
Let's not find out.
Someone definitely.
Okay, hi, Alex.
Where'd you go?
Désolé,
Oh, hi,
désolé.
Beth.
I'm like
No, no worry.
behind you.
Hi, hey, Andrew.
I am fine. Yes. Now we've got.
Keep turning.
Behind me.
I'm
Oh,
so
there you
sorry
are.
about that.
Yeah, there.
No, that's
Everybody's
fine.
a different shade of color in
So
this.
should I race through it?
place.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
There wasn't as
yeah,
many color
take your time.
choices,
Do
I
it at the
felt.
exact same
No, I just
speed
mean
you
like
have.
we've all
How are
gotten
you?
to
Hi,
know.
Okay, and
Oh yeah, I
and
know.
we just might
For sure.
question.
You definitely have a tan.
Maybe
Yeah.
Do you have a
shortly.
tan?
Yes.
Yeah, you
Did you
got
change
a tan.
the
They
Everybody
clean
in
up
the
for now?
Don't worry about
Okay,
it.
No, we didn't.
and
Yeah.
are you introduced?
Also,
to
I
me?
thought you
Or-
were.
Hey,
Hello.
Introduce you again.
Perfect.
Do,
Thank
do
you.
we know
I
each
meant
other in the real
redraft,
world?
but
Hello,
I
tout
know
le
your
monde.
name is-
Bonjour. Hello. Hi,
Yep.
everyone.
Rough
Sorry.
morning, rough morning.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Oh,
I.
William's
Uh,
speaking.
Oh,
It's David Yee.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. That was entirely my fault. I didn't do an Android build of the world, so everyone on a Quest
Why?
was unable to get in. And I'm very sorry to you,
So good to
Catherine.
see you.
But I'd like to reintroduce and maybe let's get a round of applause for Catherine Bourgeois speaking to us about her production, Violette. Merci, Catherine, and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So thank you, Alex, and thank you for being here. It's my first time giving a talk in virtual reality, and while sitting in the comfort of my home in Tochage, Montreal. So I'm here as the artistic director of a company called Joe, Jack, and John. And we are like 17 years old, a theater company based in Montreal. And our mandate focus on around collaboration and as well like with a special with a particular focus on collaborating with artists living with disabilities. So we are like an interdependent company that love to create new shows and like devise collectively together. Today I'm here to talk about Violet, which is our project that involves mixed reality, which is like live theater and VR, like a VR film. So this project started about like 4 years ago. The kind of like the like creation inception process started like 4 years ago, and initially I had in mind a site specific piece that would then like get like an audience member to knock on a door and come in an apartment and meet one person. So that would have been like a one person at a time play, and where like an actress with a disability would open the door, welcome the spectator, and make a cup of tea and share our story. And then I traveled to Europe, and I was in a conference about like live arts, and there was this conference more about like mixed reality and augmented reality and virtual reality. And my only experience in that was that as a user, so I had very little to I knew very little about it, but the the conference person was like actually convinced that theater people were actually good artists to help develop the literacy and the medium of VR, because we are used to kind of like compose and write compelling story, engaging story, complex storytellings in actually immersive environment, because like the theater experience being like a kind of like 360 immersive moment when you go to theater. So I came back to Montreal and I read more about the VR and I reflected, and I felt really attracted to this new medium because I felt that it kind of like created a sense of connection that maybe photo, TV, and film could create way back when it came out, because there was this proximity and the novelty of the medium. But now, like this new medium that could create such a sensation was actually VR. At the same time, I was a bit like repulsed by the medium because not because of the empathy feeling that it creates, but I just wonder if we needed in our society like um, more privileged people with high tech, expensive gears, developing a sense of entitlement around in the world, of this kind of like, oh yes, I know what is a refugee camp. I was there. I walked in the shoes of a refugee. Or I know what is Ebola crisis in Africa because I was there. I walked in those shoes. So I guess that like convinced of the attracted by the medium, and as well convinced of the importance of having more diverse voices emerging. I kind of like jumped in and decided to transform my site-specific theater project into like a mixed reality of like theater and VR. Um, so we started to work on a story that was anchored in a reality that we don't talk often or that we don't hear often about, which is the fact that 70 to 90% of women living with an intellectual disability will experience sexual abuse in the course of their lives. And um, so this is a difficult reality that like collaborating with artists with disability over the last 17 years, the company has been very kind of like, it's a reality that we encountered in our lives. And so we gathered like a team of differently abled artists, and we started to devise on this subject. So Violet is actually like a story about intimacy, about consent, and about abuse made by a family friend. Um, Soon, in the process of development of the script and all that, it became clear that we needed to do a beta version of it, because actually, like most of us being like theater maker, we had no clue what we were talking about, and it was very difficult to have meeting and to actually like see how it would be unfolding. So we did like a beta version at very low cost. It was shot in my own apartment in my bedroom, and it was as well like presented. The theater um, piece, or the performance itself, was as well presented in my apartment in the spring of 2018 here in Montreal. So I'm just gonna present you like a short clip of this kind of like first beta version installment. And it's like this version is in French and the sound is not that great, but it's basically the welcoming of a participant that arrives. So the live part of it, the more like theater part of it, and going to like a quick excerpt of the 360 movie that we produced. Here we go. Participant that arrives. So the live part of it, the more. Okay. Oh, okay. So actually, oh, I think there's some sound going over. Um,
Well, hi everybody. So sorry for the technical difficulty. Um, my name is Yumi. I'm a colleague of Catherine. I also work for Joe, Jack, and John. I guess that Catherine had a small connection issue, so she has just disappeared, but she should be back in a few seconds. Were you guys able to see the video, or was it not showing for you? Not really.
Yeah, no, I can see it.
I can see it. I couldn't
Okay.
see anything.
I could see it.
I can't see
Yep,
anything.
it's just
playing
repeating.
for me.
I
It's
see
also
two
still
screens
playing
for
too.
me.
Yeah, there's two screens and the audio was really echoey and hard to make out.
Okay. Well, I'm really sorry about that. For those of you who could not see the screen, the video showed the actress Violet, welcoming the spectator into an apartment and leading him to the bedroom where the interactive experience used to take place in the original beta version of the play. So it was really a site-specific experience, and that created a whole set of issues because we wanted to bring this work to more people, out in the world and have it tour and be able to reach as many people as we could with the story of Violet. So from the very first version that was shown in the video, we worked towards a second version that was not site specific anymore, even though it was shot in the same set. But the video itself shows a bedroom, and the experience takes place in a very similar setting. However, the interactive experience takes place in a custom built cabin that is half the size of the real VR space, so that when the spectator arrives to take part into the experience, it finds himself in this like tiny cabin that gives this kind of feeling of intrusion, and it's a little bit claustrophobic, and you feel really uncomfortable because you're really entering a personal and private space of Violet, and you're about to hear her very personal and private story. So it was really important for us to find a way to keep a connection between the real physical space and the virtual world space. So the what we let's say that we use a couple of tricks to try to ensure continuity in the space perception. So one is that the accessories and the furniture that are in the cabin are exactly the same ones that you see in the virtual world. It's just the dimensions are a little bit different. And another one is that we used a blanket that is given to the audience member when it arrives on the set, that he puts or she puts on herself, and then in the virtual world you enter the experience sitting on a bed with the same blanket on you that you can see. So it gives you the impression that is still you yourself, your physical self in the virtual world with the same accessories around you. And
Hi,
I
Yumi.
think I saw Catherine, so
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
gonna
back.
let her continue.
So I guess you were covering more the anchoring the participant and the reality. Um,
Mhm.
Some of the challenge, I'm sorry, I disappeared. I was exposed from the space, but I'm back. So some of the challenge that I faced and I discovered through that first incarnation was actually the fact of directing actors when there's a 360 camera in a space where like I can't be in the space and I still have to direct and get the kind of like get this to see what it looks like. So that was one of the challenges that we faced. And as well, I think that one of the finding that we had was that like the importance of like other characters, because if it's only one character talking, there's a very minimal use of the actual like 360 environment, while if there's like interaction with different character in the space, there's a possibility for like using more like the 360 element of it. And in the kind of like golden version that we produced after that, we even like pushed it further in the sense that put more emphasis on creating like an interaction with the audience member and getting the audience member to become more like a participating kind of role in it, like as a witness, but as well as a friend, as a confiding friend. So I think that that's about like that what we learned from that. And I would like to just like if for you it was possible to follow me on the second platform over there, I'd like to show you like an excerpt of like the golden version that like we produced last year. So teleportation. Hi, Alex.
Hi, I'm just going to rebuild this one just so that we don't have the
Okay, but
issue.
I can talk. I'm starting with the other screen. So do you want to do that while I do the the video screen?
You're going to do slides?
No, I'm finishing with the slides.
Okay. Yes, this is the one I'm going to tweak here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, 1 second. You can start. Go ahead.
Nice work, Catherine.
Hi, Clayton. Hi. Oh my God, I'm sweaty.
I know, I have eye sweat.
um. So while Alex is rebuilding, I think we kind of like gathered. So Alex is gonna rebuild the projection screen. But I just gonna keep chatting away. um, I guess like because of the subject matter being such a difficult one, we chose to actually like not develop like a a graphic work, but more like a magic realism way of doing the story, of unfolding the story. So, and in the golden version, we also decided to push further the confinement in the room, and not using like footage like of external elements as you've seen downstairs with the beta version, where we kind of like put like the impression of like a layer of actual forest in the room, but we just developed more like the magical aspect in a more like imaginative way. And the screen's still not there, so um so um I guess that like the production, I could tell you that the production was meant to open in Montreal last May, but obviously because of COVID, it was postponed, and we thought that we would be able to open it this late October. But as you might know, the COVID crisis in Montreal is like we're about like 1,100 new cases a day. So we don't think that we're going to be able to present the production this fall. So we just like keeping finger crossed that one day we'll be able to actually present the full experience with the live interaction and the VR element to it. We were in touch with the Phi Center in Montreal, and they advised us to buy a clean box. So I don't know if any of you had to deal with like COVID related issue, but we bought like a clean box from the States, and it's basically like a UV rays that kind of kill everything. So between each participant, will have to put the headset in the clean box. Alex, where are you? Oh, ready.
Hi, I'm over here. Can you hear me all right? Can you see me all right? If yes, raise your hand. Wait! Don't go! Talk to me!
Blue roses are actually white roses. You cut them and put them in blue coloring. In a few hours, they turn blue.
Stay here!
I've never liked it here. It's really depressing.
You think so?
You should come with me to the forest. You can breathe there. You're free.
No, not now, okay?
You must feel so alone when I'm not there.
I'm not alone. Look, someone's here.
It's cramped. Stuffy. You'd be better off with me in the forest.
There are people who come and see me.
People like who?
Look, I have company.
People like him, Violet?
Him who?
People like Joe?
Go away! Joe will always be grateful to us. Joe fills our house with flowers of all colors, balloons, teddy bears, and thank you cards to play music. Joe sends me a blue rose every 4th of March to thank me for saving his life. Joe speaks French. He dresses well, and he's a really good guy. Joe buys me a slinky red dress for my 16th birthday. Joe comes to see me one evening when my parents are at the movies. Joe shows me a movie that I don't know how I feel. Joe invites me for a picnic. Joe puts his hand somewhere that I'm not too sure. For my 18th birthday, Joe tells me about an even more special flower. Joe says that at 18 we can. At 18 we can. Joe is a magician. His best trick? Disappearing from my life. Even more special flower. Joe says that at 18 we can. At 18 we can.
You didn't say.
So yeah, that was an excerpt. So opening won't be October 28th, but soon it will happen. So as I said, like in the little notes through the videos, I guess that like what I wanted to stretch by that is that like as theater makers, we have some tools or skills that we developed, which is, I guess, the power of words, acting, the transitioning as well. And so instead of like just relying on more like pricey and special effects and things that maybe were a bit outside of our um, reach, we actually like use the things that we were good at. And one thing that we rely all the way in theater is the suspension of disbelief, because nobody like you go to the theater and nobody believes that this is real stuff happening. There's wings, there's other people around, there's like all kind of element that tells you that this is not real life. Well, sometimes in movie we do get this impression of real life happening. So like we kind of like, if we point out and say this is a forest, and although it's like a shadow theater forest, like we rely on the fact that people will believe it is a forest. So we use that a lot because basically uh, we really stayed way more in the room in that version than in the previous version, and we try to kind of like push the imaginative aspect of it. Um, I'm just gonna move to the slide section, which
I can
is
move,
maybe.
Catherine. I can move it to you. I can move it to you.
Oh, okay.
I would also say we are a bit short on time, and it's
Yeah.
entirely my fault. Do you want to maybe take questions from the audience, like to give them a chance to ask you about the piece, or do you want to go to the slides?
Oh, I would like to finish just like as in terms of like if you could put up the slides, I will just use one slide or two. Just quickly to finish, I guess that like the first version was shot in my bedroom, and as you can imagine, I didn't want to go with the full production shot in oops, here we are, shot in my bedroom with the hundreds of audience members going through my apartment. So we did build a set. We paired up with a very fine company here in Montreal. It's named Unlimited, and this is the company. And quickly, we as well shot the thing with 3 different actresses, so we could actually present it 3 different times. So there's Anne Steffi that you've seen in the English excerpt, and there's as well Stephanie that's doing another French version, and Tamara, who's bilingual and plays both version. This is us cutting wood in the forest, and this is actually the set we built. So it's a box set that was meant to be like a closed room. So this bridge between the
Oh no, it looks like we lost Catherine again. So sorry about that. So what you're seeing right now in the time lapse is the actual set where the cabin where the experience takes place. And as you can see, the bed and the chair are the exactly same, and the pictures on the wall are the exact same elements that are in the VR video when you're experiencing the VR part of the story. So just to conclude,
I'm back.
we okay.
I'm back.
Catherine,
Sorry, thank you, Yumi. So that was our way of making a terrible set that would like bridge between the reality and the fiction and bridge the 2 worlds together. And maybe we have time for a few questions, but as well, I just wanted to let you know that if any of you would be interested to see the full version, we now have it on YouTube VR, and you can contact, or you can talk to Yumi or I about it, and we could send you the link. And Alex, if there's time for one question or two, like I'll let you decide.
Of course, yeah. Anyone have a question and want to raise their hand? We can. Good. All right.
Thanks so much for creating that, Catherine. I think that was beautiful, by the way.
Amy, one question over here. Amy Bouchard, do you have?
Hi, Catherine. Yeah, I'm just curious about the audience coming in to experience the show. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Do you
Yeah.
find that you have audiences who are also coming in on the spectrum or neurodiverse who are taking part in the work as well?
This is like the question of accessibility is very close to our art, obviously, like the accessibility as an audience member as well. So we are developing kind of like groups of people, of women, mostly living with a disability, and doing a workshop, a prepping workshop, and like just some special session for them to actually come in. So this is something that we are working on in terms of like making sure that this work reach an audience that actually concerned about it. So I would say yes. This is like actually like a quite accessible work. It's not like art to the story unfolds very kind of like smoothly and accessibly, I would say. Thanks for your
Wonderful,
question.
thanks. Yeah, thank you.
We are unfortunately at time. If you have other questions for Catherine, please maybe go find her and ask her one-on-one. And Catherine, I just want to thank you. That was, I mean, that's the equivalent of, you know, the theater while we're doing the show, the, you know, faucets explode and the place floods, but we just keep going. We keep doing it. And you were brilliant. You were absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks you for, and sorry about all that. Thank you.
No, you were amazing. Thank you so much. So we're moving on to our next, we have Beth Kate's workshop. And if you want to check out Darren O'Donnell's presentation, that is on Zoom. You can find the link in Discord. Yes, thank you again, Catherine.
My pleasure. Thanks to you.
Je peux laisser tes affaires ici. Peux-tu enlever tes souliers, s'il te plaît? Merci d'être venu chez moi. Ça fait envie de te raconter mon histoire. Ok. Chez moi, les planchers craquent. Tu sais, de faire venir tout le monde ici dans ma chambre. Pour le moment, je suis contente que tu sois là. Je vais mettre la couverture.
Merci.
On va mettre le casque.
Ok.
As-tu besoin de l'ajuster?
C'est bon.
C'est bon. Si au cours de l'expérience, tu te sens mal, enlève le casque.
Ok.
Je vais mettre les écouteurs. Vois-tu la rose bleue? Je vais te raconter mon histoire.
Non, non, c'est terminé, je t'aiderai plus. T'es nul ton histoire.
C'est une belle histoire d'amour, tu vas voir. C'est comme dans les boîtes de céréales. Il y a une surprise au fond.
Ah, puis tu me fais chier, fais dans ce que tu veux.
Vas-y, c'est le moment. Compte jusqu'à 3. 1, 2, 3. Entends-tu la forêt respirer? Je sais pas pourquoi, je commence toujours mon histoire ici. Peut-être juste parce que ça énerve Lucie, ou parce qu'il y a tellement de contes qui commencent dans les bois.
Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome. Sorry that it's over here and as opposed into the alt space, but my Go was just not stable enough. It was really glitchy and I was quite concerned about it crash. Oh, it crashes too every now and again. So often I just disappear from a space. I'm talking to my friends and I'm gone. So, so yeah, maybe next year I'll have a quest. I'm making Logan a co-host. Okay. Oh yeah, you're the live streamer. Hey, Logan. Howard is just arriving. So where is everybody located? Anybody, any place? We've got a couple Germans in the house, Jana Eiting and Christopher.
Hi.
Rojol.
10 p.m.
10 p.m. in Germany, 6 a.m. Who's making the bigger sacrifice, 6 a.m. or 10 p.m.? It's up
6
to you.
a.m.
6
Always the
a.m.
morning. Always the morning.
I actually feel quite the opposite. I don't like staying up late. I prefer
Really?
getting up early. Yeah, yeah. I'm an early
No,
bird.
the only time I like being early is when I'm still up late. No,
I
definitely morning.
agree. I agree.
I find that gross.
Well, the way it goes. Sorry, I'm double checking around here. We still got about 5 more minutes before we're supposed to start. So I'm going to go do another call in our virtual conference room and we'll be back.
Okay, great. So Deb, Lim, where are you located?
I'm in Toronto.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Give me an intersection.
I'm here with Fujian Theater.
Okay.
I meant gives you any pro.
Well, but where are you, your actual geolocation? Like what's your closest intersection? I don't know. Just
I am currently located in Chinatown, so Spadina and Dundas.
Okay, great. And that's where your home is, or in an
That's
office?
where my home is, yeah.
Okay, all right, nice. How's the weather?
I haven't gone out.
Right.
But fall weather, it's nice. It's been nice. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. How's Fujin doing?
We're doing pretty well. We've been working from home since March.
Right.
But doing well.
What's your plan for the pandemic?
We've been doing a lot of commission work and development. Not only very few like presentation and on very small scales online.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, it's been very the opposite of fun, whatever that is. Brutal. What's your role there?
My title is administrator. I work with David Yee, and it's kind of just the two of us with an intern. So I really just do it all.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's been at Mammalian, we're just sort of kind of treading water a tiny bit. Luckily, we had a project that was able to go ahead, and that's what I'm talking about in Germany at a very reduced sort of scale, as I'll cover. But yeah, it's been not very pleasant. And also just this question of, should I be thinking about solving this in a major way, or should we just plug our noses and hope we survive and then we get through the other side? That's a big question for me. I don't want to invest too many resources in pivoting when I'm not interested so much in the digital kind of thing. So it's a challenging question for me. Yeah, the thing that I think about is that theater for me is, there's three things about it, which is I attend work to leave the house, or I attend work to hang out with other people. And then one third of my desire is to actually see the work. So there's 2/3. Without those 2/3, checking out even other people's stuff online I'm not motivated. Although the alt space VR, are you enjoying that by any chance? Like, do you find that you're there with people and that feels good in a kind of meaningful way?
I don't know. I think it's something that we're still navigating very much so. Because it feels like as much as we're trying to do collaborative things, it's almost like you're working on your own unit, you know?
Right.
And there may be some collaboration, but it's really challenging. So I'm not too sure yet.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I don't know, Tian. I don't know what your practice at all or who you are. So what are you doing?
Well, who are you and what are you doing here? Oh my God. I did not expect to get the interrogated. I'm on Toaster Labs advisory board.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm in media arts. I'm actually one of the few non-theater practitioners.
Okay, great.
Here, I teach media arts with. I'm at York with Ian Garrett.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, great. Thanks for coming. That's good to know. And anybody else want to say hi? Jason, I've never met you, I don't think. You don't look familiar to me. I'm Darren.
No, we have not met. Hi, yes, I am Jason. I'm also a non-theater person,
Okay, cool.
but came into VR from the filmmaking angle. But I always felt right from the beginning that that VR is more akin to theater than filmmaking, in my opinion.
I know what you mean.
That really came apparent to me when I started hearing directors saying things like, "Yeah, but the problem with 360 videos, you can't direct the audience." I'm like, that kind of sounds like a problem theater directors have not worried about for 1,000 years. Like, it doesn't sound like a problem, you know? So I started looking more toward theater, and a lot of my friends are theater folk, but I've just not had the experience myself. So so I feel like I'm learning about theater through VR, actually kind of going the opposite way.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, cool. All right, thanks. Who else do I not know? Madison, do you want to introduce yourself, a little bit about what you're up to, if you're there?
Hi,
how you doing?
I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, good. Thanks for coming. Just admitting somebody. So what's your interest in this, or what's your practice, or what brought you to the conference?
So I was introduced to the whole PXR thing from Ian Garrett. He was one of my profs at York.
Okay.
Yeah, I graduated York last year, and
So glad I claimed my Apple Care on the last day it was a thing. I'm on Mac. It works now.
Maybe we can. Anyway. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Madison.
Apart from that, I've been since graduating, I was working with Canada's Ballet Organ as their lighting director until the pandemic happened. It's funny because literally town after town, it felt like everything was shutting down as we were moving. Apart from that, it's mainly lighting and media design that I'm interested in. And as far as XR, I mean, when I was in high school, I learned a bit about the Unity engine. Slowly, I've been interested more in Unreal Engine, mainly because of how they have the Unreal Marketplace and they do the free items for the month. And that's just a lot of assets available to creators.
Okay.
A lot of, it's a lot of assets that a creator can use to build an environment. I'm interested a lot in that and Blender, and eventually I want to create my own stuff, but never really had time until now.
All of those words have next to no meaning for me.
Fair enough.
Meaning for me, but
they have meaning for you, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, that's Chris Rojol, who's one of the performers in the project that I'm about to introduce, and he's beaming in from Germany. Yeah. So thanks everybody for coming here. Before we start, I'm just asking a few people who I don't know just introduce themselves. I see somebody that I don't know, Rinchin Dolma. Do you want to say hi and just introduce yourself to whatever extent you feel like it? Or
hi,
not?
I'm sorry I'm late. I got a little lost.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
Hi folks, I'm from Toronto and I'm with Theatre Passe Muraille.
Okay.
So I'm just I'm happy to be here. Thanks for letting me intro myself.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. So should we roll this, Aiden, do you think?
Yeah, let's get the boat going.
Okay, great.
All right, I just need to do my little preamble. So thank you all for making it and pivoting with us in this technological adventure that we are calling PXR2020. I am Aiden Hammond, I am the project manager, and I'm so glad that we are all here together. PXR2020 is brought to you by Single Thread Theatre Company and Electric Company Theatre, with thanks to our community partners, Toaster Lab and Langara Centre for Entertainment Arts, and with the spending support of Canada Council for the Arts Digital Strategies Fund. I would like to acknowledge that I am reporting to you live from the stolen and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, Musqueam, the Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And I see that we're coming in from all over, so I want you on this Thanksgiving weekend to respect where you are and how privileged we are to be here sharing this moment with the technology we have here today. Please, Darren, you know more about this than I do. I am so excited to hear what you have to bring to us.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. So I'm going to share a screen and get this rolling. There we go. Make sure I have my clicker. Yeah. Okay. So great. I obviously also want to thank everybody that Aiden thanked, and thank Aiden, Alex, and Liam from Single Thread, Clayton from Electric Company, for providing all of the support that they've been providing, and as well, I'm setting all of this up. It's all very confusing to me. Also wanted to acknowledge Cannon Hewitt, who's in the room with us. Cannon is helping with the tech stuff and is also a producer with Mammalian on this project, and is part of the team that managed to get our video running and all the goggles through the VR sync. So maybe there might be some questions for Cannon after this. So our project, Mammalian Diving Reflexes project, The Last Minutes Before Mars, we just premiered on the 25th of September in Bochum, Germany, and it was presented by Schauspielhaus Bochum and co-commissioned by the Milano Triennale and Zona K in Milano. I would encourage you to check out Zona K. They're a really interesting organization that punches well above their weight in Milan. It's a project space. They're super cool. Milano Triennale is cool, but it's big and everybody knows it. But Zona K, if you're curious about cool stuff going on there. So first up, I want to introduce the co-director of the project, Jana Eiting. That's her picture. She's also in the room with us. And she was on the ground directing in Germany while I directed via Zoom this project from Australia, which was a fucking nightmare. And she also directed all of the 360 video bits that we used. And I've been working with her since 2011 on a variety of projects. That's a project we worked on with refugees, and then there she is getting her haircut by kids. And so I also want to introduce Christopher Rojol, who is also in Zoom with us, and he is one of the member of Mit Ohne Alles, which is a collective of young people that we've been working with since 2012 in Germany, when he was 12 years old. And there he is, Christopher Rojol at age 12. Look at how cute he is. And he's still cute. He's now becoming more handsome than cute. And so that's him. And so I've been working with him since he was 12, Jana since she was 24, and I was 47 at that time. Obviously, we're all a lot older, especially me. So Mammalian started to work in the region with the Children's Choice Awards at the Ruhr Festival. So this is a project where we take a bunch of kids and we see all of the shows in a given festival, and then we give out awards at the end. And so we did that for 3 years with young people in the region. And then since that time, we've worked with the same group of young people basically from the first year. We worked with them. Of course, it's winnowed down, but we've worked with those guys since that time. We've done a project, at least one project a year over the course of the last bunch of years. In 2014, we posed to them the question of what they wanted to do next. And that was just when the situation with the refugees coming to Europe was starting to heat up. And they all said, they framed it in terms of working with marginalized people. That was kind of the language that they were using at that time. I'm just going to expand that. They were using that sort of language, and then we evolved that and continued to discuss what that might look like. And then we decided to work with youth who were new to the country, particularly interested in finding a population who was, where there were representatives from the refugee crisis that was happening then. Particularly, it was with Syria at the time, but there were people coming from all over the place. So we created this project called Millionen, Millionen, Millionen. That title comes from the Schiller quote from the anthem of Europe, which is Ode to Joy, and the quote is Seid umschlungen Millionen, which means be embraced, you millions. And so the leitmotif, or the theme of the festival, was Seid umschlungen, and Millionen, I'm just going to admit somebody in here. Okay, Millionen was the second line, be embraced, you millions. So this show was really, the theme of the festival was Seid umschlungen, or the tagline, and we named our actual show Millionen, as in millions, millions, millions of the people to be embraced. And so what we did for the project is we took a bunch of German-born teens and about 40, and there was about maybe 20 of those, and then 20 teens from who had come to the region fairly recently, refugees, immigrants to the region very recently, and we took them all camping. And we did what you do in camping. We played games, we made crowns for our hair, we climbed in trees, we climbed on piles of dirt, we pet horses, we played chess, we went canoeing. And then what we did was we created a show that basically reported on what happened over the course of these camping trips. We went on 3 camping trips over the course of 3 weekends. And if you take 40 teens from Germany, Syria, Albania, Gambia, and Poland, among other places, if you take all those guys camping, trust me, lots of shit happens. So we just basically reported on, this is what happens when you take these 2 groups together, and we all, this is what happens. And so at that point, Mit ohne alles, the collective that was originally mostly German-born young people that we've been working with, expanded to include a bunch of these other guys. 2 of these other guys are in this project, and that I'm introducing now. And so, sorry, here's some more from Millionen, Millionen, Millionen. We had iPads where we looked at all the photographs. You can see the photographs there, and the young people are controlling them through iPads. And we talked about what we did there. The disco ball is representing the fire that we used to go around, and we roasted marshmallows on a disco ball. And here you can see that's Pascal in the middle, and he's been with Mit ohne alles since the beginning, and that's Robert on the right, and they're both in the Mars project, and they're now, you can see here, I love these 2 pictures. They're older, they're now 8 years older than they were then, and they look like they've lived, they've had some times that they've lived through, and they have, but these are stills from the 360 video, so they're acting there too, just FYI. So The Last Minutes Before Mars is a mixed reality project that combines live performance with 360 video. First, I'm going to take you through the show as the audience experiences it, and then I'm going to go through a bit of the development process and the making of. I'll share some stills from the 360 video, but you can watch them themselves in their 360 form through the YouTube links that I've got in the Discord. So if you want to check that out, or if you don't have access to that, just let me know and I can share the YouTube link so that you can see them in their 360. Now, at this point, I'll just describe the show from the audience perspective so you can have a sense of the experience. And I've got some photos of it. I've also got some drawings by the Montreal's Saoirse Gibson, who's the designer on the project. And just the show is conceived to accommodate as many audience members as the budget will allow for VR goggles. However, with the premiere, we only could fit 12 people in this due to COVID. So we had 8 performers and 12 audience members, which was obviously ridiculous, but that's what, I mean, we're lucky to get that happening at all. So you can see there, when the audience enters, you sit on either side of what appears to be a cube in the center of the room. There are a few people in the cube seen through the translucent dividers that are keeping you, that are creating the cube. And there's 3 performers walking around the cube. There's beautiful, mysterious music playing. There's fog in the air. And basically the performers first guide you through putting the goggles on, and you test them with an image of the room and that you're in. So when you first put on the goggles, you're in the same room, but it's empty. There's no set, there's no lights, there's nothing. And you spin around and you look, you're guided so that you can start to feel what it's like to operate the goggles. Then they basically take you through some meditations and visualizations, asking you to imagine your own bathroom. That's where it sort of ends up, is that you're asked to imagine your own bathroom and go through, think about what has happened to you in that particular room, and that particular room as a very, very ordinary room, a room that you're in almost every day of your life if you're at home, certainly every day of your life if you're at home, and all of the trials and tribulations that you've had there, all the good times you've had there with warm baths and lovely poops, and then obviously the bad times you've had there when you're, whatever, you're sick or you're stressed out about something, or it's 5 a.m. and you've been up all night doing cocaine and you're thinking you've fucked up your life so badly by your life choices. But this room is a very special room, and just the fact is that one day, whether you go to Mars or not, you will never see that room again, which starts to introduce some of the themes that are related to I guess Stoicism and Buddhism are two of the places we're drawing some of these ideas, and impermanence. So then they ask you to don the goggles, and whenever you enter the goggles, again, you first see the room that you're in, and this space without the set, and then these series of videos. And the first video you see is these 5 youth who are astronauts. You learn that they're astronauts that have been selected to go to Mars, to colonize Mars in the face of an existential threat of a speeding meteor that's coming to Earth, which may or may not be fake news. And you hear them receive their last assignment. So 48 hours before liftoff, they're asked to create a 360 archive of their most beautiful but ordinary places on Earth. And over the course of the show, the audience is in and out of the goggles as they spend time with these guys over their last minutes on Earth in some of their favorite spots. Their homes. There's Chris at his favorite comic store. There's Robert with his brother in a park that they hang out in. There's Lynn hanging out with her family. I think Lynn may be in the room in Zoom right now. If you are, hi. And there's Lynn, her grandmother's to the left there in the family. There's Iska with her sister. And we encourage them at times to actually acknowledge the camera, because the fictional conceit is that they're creating this for themselves to look at when they're on Mars, and they're feeling lonely. They can look back and relive it. So it's their POV. The video is the POV of the astronaut in the future. And so just some technical stuff. Time spent in the goggles is roughly 6 minutes per session in the goggles, for a total of 30 minutes of 360 video. So 5 sessions in the goggles with a couple sessions that are a little bit shorter. And then there's 40 minutes of live performance. So that's about a 70-minute experience. Some of the 360 sequences are just with the sound that was recorded during the shoot. Some are accompanied by a live voiceover provided by the performers. And the performers are providing this live voiceover from an area on the set that's that mission control area. So there's the mission control, and that's they're performing it there. And some of the videos are also supported by music, which is also played by the cast using a Roland sampler, and that's Emma using the sampler there, learning how to use it. And that's located in this mission control. There's Lynn with the sampler in front of her. She also played the sampler, or activated it, I guess. So they're performing, the youth are providing, our performers are providing a live scoring by switching between different tracks on a given piece of music, which was composed by a couple friends of mine in Hamburg called Isola. Isola Music is the company. Every time the performers take off the goggles, or every time the performers are in the goggles watching the video, not the performers, I'm sorry, the audience is in the goggles watching the video, the performers surreptitiously are moving these dividers around, so that every time you take off the goggles as the audience member, you are suddenly in a different space. I want that feeling. And for me, that capitalizes on what I think is the most interesting part for me, or the weirdest part about VR 360 is, for me, it's the moment when you take them off. That's the most alarming to me, and there's almost a sort of dystopian feeling as you return back to reality. When I first got my Go, I was playing this fishing game for literally 2 hours, but I started it when the sun was up, streaming into my room, and then over the course of playing the game, the sun went down, and when I took it off, it was the street light coming in, and the socks that I had strewn around my room were just sort of glowing, and I just was like, it felt really dystopian that when you come back to reality, reality feels like the wrong place that you're in, and the VR world is so much more beautiful. So I really wanted to capture that sort of dystopian aspect of returning back to this place that is kind of not recognizable because you've been away for it for so long, is sort of what it feels like. So that you can see there that how the partitions get moved into different configurations. And so when the audiences outside of the goggles, they're guided through a series of meditations and visualizations where they're asked to imagine in detail a beautiful ordinary day. And then they are later then asked to share that beautiful ordinary day that they've imagined in detail with another audience member. And then even later in the show, they're asked to share what they've heard of the other audience member to yet a third party. So you share it, you hear somebody's, then you share what you've heard to somebody else. And you can see there the little sharing sessions, a little bit challenging with the COVID restrictions, but we had these sections. And so over the course of the show, you're meeting other people who you're supposed to think of sort of as potentially the people that you will be spending the rest of your life with on Mars if you were one of the astronauts. And so finally, the audience is asked to combine all of their beautiful ordinary days into a beautiful ordinary day object. They're asked to imagine, to hold out their hands and beam all of these beautiful ordinary days, these banal days that are beautiful because of their banality, into their hands. And at one point, as that happens, and they visualize this organic object that represents this, then we have this party sequence where we basically claim to steal them all back. The astronauts take them back and claim that these objects will now be planted on Mars, so that generations from now, the Mars colonizers might have a chance to have their own beautiful ordinary days, which probably won't happen for a while on Mars. Also, throughout this plot line, there are a series of ethical questions that are posed to the audience during the meditation sort of beautiful days plot line. There's also these ethical questions about the future of humanity, whether humanity has the right to colonize other planets like that, questions like that, whether we should send a diverse crew to Mars to save humanity that includes disabled people, or should they be our so-called brightest and best people that we send to Mars? I call these questions the Thunberg questions after Greta. And finally, there's also another plot where when you don the goggles and you're into the space, the empty space that I mentioned, there's, over the course of being in the goggles, suddenly within that space, there are 3 of the astronauts who are entering that space, and they come up to you, and they in the VR goggles, and they claim that they have them, they've got your things, they've got them, they didn't manage to take them, and maybe that's not so clear what's happening, but they are holding the box, which you maybe recognize as the beautiful ordinary day object box. And then eventually at the end of the show, they enter the space in real life, and grab you and take you outside, and then outside you're returned they're given the beautiful ordinary day objects, which are these, they're called roses of Jericho. They're little plants that if you they look dead, but if you add some water, they spring back to life. So they give those back to you and say, you must take them. And it's clear that these guys have abandoned the mission, and you've learned that there's been some people who've abandoned the mission, and that these people are now being hunted, and they're persona non grata. And then they spray "fuck Mars" on the side of the theater. You can see them, the objects are in the foreground there, and our audience members taking them back. So they spray "fuck Mars." Then a cop car screams up, and this cop jumps out and screams at everybody that they must leave. I asked the cop to play it as if he was scared, as if his life was at risk by these people getting here, and the youth run off, and he screams off with his car again, and the audience is left sort of by themselves to deal with the show. So the end. So that's the show. So now I just want to go through the conception of the show and take you through behind the scenes and how we worked in particular with the youth. So the project was first conceived as the final project in an umbrella project called Teen Totalitarianism. And Teen Totalitarianism is a festival within a festival of work that is created by and collaborated with teens for an adult audience that happens over the course of a festival. And the last project within Teen Totalitarianism is called Ask for the Moon. And Ask for the Moon is a project that features the teens that we've been working with, usually over the course of a month, say, and asks them to present a set of demands to the festival, to Mammalian as a collaborator in the festival, and any other stakeholders that are there. And we ask them to give us a set of demands about how they want to continue to work with us in the future. And in front of an audience, we negotiate with the teens about what might be possible in the future. And they'll do things like, for example, the Milan teens, one of their first things was that they wanted to Skype with the mammalian team. They wanted to Skype with us once a week. And I assured them that they do not want to get on Skype once a week. Trust me, might sound like a good idea now, and we agreed to Skype once a month. And so we did that for a bunch of months after. And this project came out of it, and they wanted to do a project about interplanetary space travel. So that was the first idea. So then that evolved into, oops, a little premature. That evolved into wanting to do a project where we would create a stage-based work in which a team of young people would basically share what they were doing at almost every moment of the day during a predetermined period. So the idea was that they would carefully document a two-week period of their lives. I was thinking during the summer, when things are chilled a bit, and basically get on stage and share this. So I wanted and go hour by hour describing a 2-week period in the life of a teenager. And I wanted to capture sort of that excruciatingly bored, but still sort of luxurious feeling of being bored in the middle of summer and not having anything to do, and what that feels like. And Mars in this case was understood to be what was happening elsewhere. It was a bit of a FOMO kind of metaphor, that there's this assumption that all these great things and exciting things are happening elsewhere, and that's what Instagram, all of that sort of shit, that way that throws up all of that, but yet your ordinary life is just quite dull. Except I wanted to really look at the beautiful aspects of that. So what we did first was we did a test of this with the Milano teens. We got them to fill out this survey on Google Docs, which we made a survey for each of them that had all of the times for a 72-hour period. Every hour, we got them to fill this out, and myself and the producer, Alice Fleming, also did this. So you can see there, yeah, it's a basic mindfulness survey. Where are you? Describe where you are. What do you hear? What are you doing? Who are you with? How do you feel? What are you annoyed about? What would you change? What are you grateful for? So a little bit of a mindfulness kind of survey. And then you can see at the bottom, there's that's the line that then was developed for the script. And you can see that's 4 p.m. We've got that happening, or that's Alba. That's what Alba was experiencing. Then at 5 p.m., she's in the same place. Now she's listening to BTS, and she's got her new €40 earbuds. She's tired, doesn't know what she cooks for dinner. So what we did was we took 72 hours of this times 6 performers, turned that into a script, and then threw them up on stage and for a little workshop presentation of going year by year, or sorry, not year by year, hour by hour through their lives. It was interesting. I have to say that it was, and it might appeal to a certain kind of audience that really likes sort of high concept kind of stuff, but ultimately it was kind of boring, I got to say. So that's when we decided to make the decision to film it. And this idea of the beautiful ordinary day archive started to develop, and we approached Konstantin Bach, who's a filmmaker we work with. He suggests we do it in 360 video. So we prepared that by interviewing all of the youth about their favorite spots. And there's the Duomo in Milano, where that's obviously some filming we did there. So we interviewed them all on WhatsApp, talked to them about the project, their favorite spots, and then we shot that a bunch of footage in Milan in October of 2019 with the Milan youth. We were supposed to keep on developing that, but of course COVID came. Now, our approach to the 360 video was, again, ordinary places, just sort of ordinary places that they would miss on Mars, not fantastic roller coasters or swimming with sharks, which is often what the 360 video is about. We wanted to look at the sort of beautiful ordinary things that you take for granted. And I think the project has become more poignant because of COVID, because we took so much for granted, and that all disappeared in March. We worked in Germany. We worked with Story Lab from Dortmund University to create the video. They're a research lab working in these immersive forms. And some sort of technical stuff. So you guys, just to share this stuff, we did the Milan footage in stereoscopic, which requires a very large camera. You can see there, that's Konstantin in the water. He will do anything for the shot. So it's a very large round camera with 6 fisheye lenses, essentially 3 sets of 2 eyes. It produces a 3D image with depth and parallax. So when you move, things look like they move behind it. So there's parallax. And so it's more real, but ultimately in Germany, we decided to go with this GoPro Fusion camera, which has only 2 fisheye lenses, one on either side of the camera. You can see it there. It's quite surreptitious. You don't really see it. It's quite discreet, and you can put it on a bike and stuff like that. there was no depth to this, but there's a 360, obviously. The two big differences for our purposes was that this is not at all intrusive, but more salient, the stereoscopic requires so much data that you have to manage. And so that's wrangling all of that was very, very difficult. And we had a month turnaround to do this. So to do this, to reproduce this is not easy. So we went with that, with a fast turnaround. I see the difference between stereoscopic and monoscopic. Some people actually don't even perceive it or even can't even notice it. Some people find it even the depth to be a little bit disturbing. It could be a bit hard on the eyes. In terms of audio stuff, we used a Zoom H3 VR for the sound atmosphere and had two sets of Sennheiser EW112 PG4 GB band for the nerds out in the house. I don't know what any of those numbers mean, but that's what we used to get the dialogue. In terms of how we chose the shots, we just made the decision for the shots by asking the performers the same question posed to their characters. If you were lonely and isolated on Mars and about to, considering killing yourself or whatever, where on Earth would you like to visit? And what are your happy places and who are your happy people? And this was inspired by this, this is interesting. I think it's a NASA 2016 NASA evidence report, risk of adverse conditions, risk of adverse cognitive or behavioral conditions and psychiatric disorders. And they rate planetary travel. You can see down at the bottom, the planetary travel is rated quite high. And you have what the L up at the top stands for likelihood, and then C is the consequences on operations. What is the risk disposition of that? And likelihood and consequences on long-term health. And 4 in both cases means death. So they and I find this slide also kind of funny here. This is it's just risk management 101, but it's really funny. So exposure to radiation may affect central nervous system, which may affect sleep, which may affect individual performance, which may affect team performance. Yeah, no shit. So it was just a funny NASA report that's stating the obvious, but just the fact that isolation was one of the big things that they're concerned about, and just how we've all been experiencing that. So we had the basic shot list here. You can see the performers on one side, and then the various places. So everybody had to shoot quite an ordinary place. Everybody had to shoot a sort of beautiful place in their life, it'd be in nature, something like that. 2 people had to do a scene with family. 3 people had to do scenes with friends. The party sequence was everybody, but 3 people had to appear reluctant, and there was a scene of them sort of bored at the end of the party because they were the people that were leaving and the renegades, and then one of the renegades just sitting at the end, not going to bed while the others went to sleep. And the voiceover texts that we made for the 360, which were performed live, were created by interviewing the performers while on location. So they're on location, and again, a mindfulness exercise where we ask them to what they feel there, what they're thinking there, and what they do there. And it focused on this being in the present and that sort of thing. Here's Chris's text, which I'm going to ask him to read for us. So you get just a whiff of the brilliant Christopher Rojol in his performance. Anytime you're ready, Chris. He would normally do this in German. He's going to do it in English for us. That's so kind of him.
Right.
Yeah.
When I come into the store, I go over to the table with the novelties and look if there's something new for me. Then I go over to the action stuff and fantasy, then briefly past the erotic department and over to the comedy stuff. Then I do another round. Here I bought Comey Can't Communicate. In Comey Can't Communicate has Comey communication problems and cannot speak to strangers. But actually, she's quite popular. Her goal is to get 100 friends. On Mars, you either will click with the people or you won't. If don't, that's it. Your communication problems will be forever there. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
So the highlighted text is what I wrote to start to lay down the plot that Chris is not very much interested in the mission. And so adding lines like this and character stuff is always obviously in negotiation with the performers, as for the most part, they're playing themselves for all intents and purposes in some ways. And we never proceed without their consent for the content, which in any case is very difficult to do when you're working with kids and teenagers. If there's something that they don't want to do, they just simply do not do it. It's pretty hard to muscle kids, I have to say. So so that's the script that is done as voiceover. The script that the performers perform live to the audience, which is not the voiceover stuff, but the sort of more meditative stuff, had two threads: the audience's beautiful ordinary days that they had to imagine, and then the Thunberg questions about interplanetary travel and colonialism. That stuff was in response quite a bit to conversations I had in real life and on WhatsApp with a Milan youth, Sarah Ben Hamouda. And Sarah is a deeply Thunbergian youth and very passionate activist. And that's her there during, it looks like it's during the pandemic at a protest. That's a picture that's her profile pic from WhatsApp. And then also I was inspired by a special issue of the Futures peer-reviewed journal, which focused on the ethics of human colonization in the context of the 2018 social and conceptual issues in astrobiology meeting in Reno, Nevada. And there was lots of interesting stuff in this journal. I met with one of the authors, a blind ethicist who insists that those with disabilities should be part of any colonizing mission. I found that interesting, and I asked her if she would feel comfortable putting her children on an airplane piloted by a blind person. She laughed and said no, but noted that the technology is very close and that by the time we start sending people to Mars, all systems should be a go and that sort of thing. Then with the youth, we had 2 script writing workshops where the performers basically rewrote aspects of all of this stuff. So all of these questions, ethical stuff, they rewrote it, they retooled the ethical questions so that it was more in line with what they were thinking, and so that it made sense for them. So change the script in large swaths. So to sum up, the performers' involvement, they chose meaningful locations through an interview and writing process. They provided a voiceover that we did through interviews. They rewrote sections of the script in particular aspects that were related to the Thunberg stuff. And then Pascal, who's a drag artist, he made and designed makeup for everybody, and he did everybody's makeup. To take you through this, the schedule with working with the performers, obviously there was pre-production schedule, meetings and stuff like that, but we had 1 Zoom meeting to introduce the project and get them thinking about the locations, 2 days of writing with the youth, 1 week of shooting all the locations, 1 on each day, and then some days for pickups and the party and stuff, 2 weeks of devising, rehearsing while stitching and editing was happening, 1 week of the tech preview with an opening on Friday, so total together that was a month. So now I'm just gonna chat a little bit with Chris, and just I just want to ask you, Chris, a little bit about your experience of us examining your life in this way and bringing a camera into your life. Can you just describe how did that feel? Was that an enjoyable experience? Did you feel it was an imposition? Just tell us what that was like for you.
I think it was very interesting. It's kind of like you're making your life a little bit more actionful, more more stuff is happening, kind of you imagine. Sometimes you have these moments where you just imagine going to the moon, or for example going to the Mars, and actually kind of doing it was right. It felt a bit odd, but also it was kind of fun.
And sharing, we would interview you and then share these, you would speak these thoughts that were as if your thoughts, like what life was like going around when you would go around Nemo, that comic store. And do you feel comfortable sharing, the fact that you walk, I guess it sounds like you walk past the erotic department. You never pause into the erotic department ever, I guess? You can say no comment.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it. I know a few things from there. Also, my sister recommended one.
Okay, all right. And what was it like having us come to your house and hang out with your family? Because there's a scene where we hang out with your dad that we kept in the project. Was that, did you prep for that at all?
I mean, a little bit. You think about how you want to present yourself. Do you want to show the audience how you really are, or do you want to maybe address something that you don't want to share? So you kind of have to think about what you want to share and what you don't want to share.
Did you want to share something in particular? Is there some way that you framed yourself in a way that you highlighted something about yourself?
I think I thought about it a lot, like in the process with the places that I choose, but
Right.
while I filmed it and did it, I didn't really think about it anymore. I just did it.
Right. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks. And people can ask questions and stuff like that. So I'm at the end of my presentation and just now leaving some time. If people have any questions and want to chat about this at all, happy to engage with anybody or whatever. We can obviously feel free to leave now, but that's all I have. Also, if Jana's here too, if you have any questions, she directed the 360 video stuff on the ground because I was unable to be there. And I guess, yeah, so that's, I'm not going to say anymore, except to say that the plot, the plot of the youth abandoning the mission, Jana doesn't like that. She thinks it's not mammalian enough, and it's too drama-rama. And I think in the end, I agreed. And the thing, we didn't have any moment where the audience spent any time with the youth, getting to know them. They've seen them in the goggles, but they don't spend very much time in the show talking to them. And I want to figure out how to do that. COVID poses a big problem for that. But anyway, any questions for anybody or comments or anything from anybody? Or not? Yeah, feel free to turn on your cameras and do whatever you want. Turn on. Hey, Anna. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what was your what was your gateway into this? Like, what made you say, we need to tell this story, and this is how we're going to do it with 360 video. I'm curious to know what that path was like.
Sure. So one of the things when you're working with young people, when you're working with anybody who is a non-artist, obviously, you have to create a very solid formal container for their fairly at times loosey-goosey content to work. So here's some scissors, cut some hair, as in haircuts by children. It's very clear what the goals are there. And the more you get towards more sort of dramatic stuff, the more difficult that is to do without working with pros. And one of the things in this work that I've discovered is that obviously one of the forms that is the most formal in some ways is film, right? So you can interview, or you can do a bunch of work with young people, and then you just edit it down to something that is really succinct and great. If you throw a bunch of young people up on stage and you're trying to be spontaneous on stage, especially when you're looking for spontaneity, film, you can record spontaneity, chop it down. So that's why we were moving toward film, as somehow incorporating film into this project. And then it just was, I had been looking at VR just because a friend had a set, and I was interested in VR in general. Konstantin suggested doing that, and then it was like, oh, let's do that. Just, it was mostly like the youth will find that interesting. We'll all find that interesting. We've never done that. And then once we had the 360 idea, it was like, oh, then we're in these places for real. Why are we doing this? Oh, we're making this archive to take to Mars. I did research. Oh, wow, isolation is going to be a big problem for these interplanetary dudes. So this is a solution to this isolation problem. So that's the path toward that.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. I love origin stories.
Oh yeah, cool. Why don't I'm going to show you a video here of the. I'm going to share my screen, and I'll show you just the trailer that we made. I forgot to do that, and you'll get a sense of what the show feels like. Here we go. Okay.
Schönheit zu erinnern und diese auf dem Mars zu verbreiten. Eure letzte Aufgabe ist daher, ein Virtual Reality Archiv für eure wunderschönen normalen Tage anzulegen. So könnt ihr euch euer Erdenleben zu jedem Zeitpunkt in Erinnerung rufen. Wir sehen uns in 48 Stunden.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trailer is more interesting. The show needs some work. Mostly in terms of that plot that feels a bit like an imposition. Yana, do you want to say anything about it? And that plot. Yana saw the show. I never saw the show. So what do you think worked and what do you think didn't work? We've yet to debrief. We're going to debrief this week. But Jet, what are you saying?
Hi everyone. I mean, there are many things that really work well. I think the meditation part, and also when the audience talks to each other about their beautiful ordinary days, that works really well. Also watching the videos, spinning on your little chair, all of that works really well. And then at some point we're trying to, and you already said that I don't like the bit where we're trying to add a bit of a fiction story where the astronauts are having a big party before they leave, and then the renegades don't go on the mission, but they stay here on planet Earth, and there's a police cop. Like all of that happens like in the last 15 minutes. So that just confuses a lot of people. But
yeah, I think when we going forward, for me, it's going to be really about how the young people who are astronauts, we've spent the whole hour watching them and getting to know them, but I do still want to keep them away from the audience a little bit, and then have a moment where they come together and basically wish them well and thank them and send them on their way, kind of thing, and maybe talk to them a bit. I mean, COVID poses so many problems with that kind of thing. I wanted some hugging to happen, when you're saying goodbye to these kids, and so there was all of these problems that COVID presented, but that's where I'm hoping to go from it, and figuring out how to have a conversation between them that's spontaneous. We considered having almost like a press conference was one idea, but if the audience started to ask them, well, so how do you, what food are you going to eat on Mars? Then the youth are going to have to improvise in a way, or the performers are going to have to improvise in a way that's going to be, you never know what kind of thing, and it's going to be hard to control that. So we have to come up with a way for there to be an interaction at that point, but that an interaction that has some formal constraints on it, so that the audience knows what they're supposed to do, the performers know what they're supposed to do, but yet we can honestly get together and get to know each other in that final goodbye moment, is what I think where we're going with it, or where I feel like going at this point. So we're heading toward almost like a few minutes before we got maybe time for one question, if anybody's got anything that they want to ask. Yeah, go ahead. A. Spencer.
Yeah, hey. I'm just curious if you could share, if you have a ballpark figure of what the budget was for the whole kind of like everything from the consultation, like youth programming, and then the final.
Yana, yeah, great question. Yana, what do you think?
Where were we? Like 30,000, 40,000 maybe?
Euros or dollars? Probably euros,
yeah, euros, I think. It was a little bit less, but due to some projects that got canceled due to Corona, we had some money that we could shift to this project. But in the end, we thought the VR goggles would be the most expensive part, but we were able to rent them for half a year, and that was a pretty good deal. So it was less than expected.
I mean, I could, if you want, I could get an exact, or is that close enough? I guess as a figure. I mean, I could find it out for sure. Is that good?
Yeah, I could probably also look it up now.
Oh, actually, I'd be curious if you were able to share that.
Yeah, sure. We can. I'll put that in the Discord or whatever. Are you in the Discord? Yeah.
Thanks, Jerry.
And there was obviously there's money that was going into like the idea. The way we work is we develop a project that is considered to be a model that we will then tour. So the first, there's a big investment off the top where we're, all the time we spent in Milan, and we'll go back, and as we figure out exactly how do we do this thing, then we try it once, and then eventually it gets like with our other projects, like All the Sex I've Ever Had now is in a really great spot where it's a model that multiple people can direct, and we just go and we have a schedule. We know what we do every minute of the day. This is not yet in that state. Eventually it'll get into that state. So we're still working that out. So that involves a larger investment off the top.
Yeah. And we paid every performer, and we had to translate. So there were a couple of costs yeah, that might differ in the future.
Howard has a question about when do we decide on the performance space? The performance space, it's a place called Zesche 1, which is a new space that has been taken over in Bochum by youth. And the Bochum Schauspielhaus is using the space to run all the youth-oriented stuff and the community-oriented stuff, I guess. And then that's where we had to work, because we were working with that team. And so it can be anywhere. I mean, it's just an empty room. I mean, black box without risers is what. But it looks like we're at time here. So thanks everybody for coming. And for questions, feel free to ask me on Discord or get a hold of me wherever you want. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Aiden, for letting us do all of this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris and Yana.
That was so great.
Big up. Yeah, cool.
So cheers everyone for coming out here. Obviously we have one last session going on. If you're interested in hearing conversation about spatial design in XR, you're gonna head over to presentation room B. If you're interested in the other conversation that's happening, cultivating audiences, you're gonna head over to presentation room A. Thanks so much. We hope to see you back in VR. Otherwise, enjoy your day. Again, thank you so much, Team Mammalian. Thanks. From wherever you are in the world.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks.
peoples, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. What logics are involved in crafting spaces for digital performance interaction? Leading us into this conversation is Ian Garrett from Toaster Lab fame.
Hello, everyone. Give me just 1 second. I realize I have our live stream on too, and I want to make sure that I have turned that off because I wanted to. Thanks everyone for joining us. We have a really great panel here, especially in terms of actually coming up and figuring out what exactly we're even talking about here. Well, that's what we've been talking about backstage. So I'm going to do brief introductions. I'm going to bring everybody out. They're waiting in the wings. I love that we have this ability to completely construct optionally our desire to gather into a theatrical space. But we'll talk a little bit more about the things that we can and cannot do in a moment. So first I'm going to invite Beth Cates to the stage. Beth is an award-winning lighting, set, projection, and mixed reality designer. She started in rock and roll at 14 and has been doing lots of work associated with this. Part of steering this event going on, you may have been with her workshop right before this as well. She was most recently the virtual world lighting designer and virtual stage lighting designer for Double I Studios VR Theater Performance Finding Pandora X at the Venice Film Festival, a theater piece in the film festival, which won Best Immersive VR Experience, and just recently completed her MFA at U Calgary, where she's been doing research between drama and computer science, looking at VR, AR, and live performance. She also sits on the advisory board for Toaster Lab, which she chairs. Next, I'm going to bring out Frank Lucas, a mixed reality designer who has a company. It's called Restless Reality Interactive. His background is in quality assurance, but now he works with companies to consult, design, prototype, and ultimately bring to fruition mixed reality applications and experiences. And we're talking a lot about how he's been doing that with HoloLens recently in the outside of this space. Again, weird that we're talking about being outside of places for consumers, enterprise, and manufacturing. Has a lot of experience also within the video game space. And then I'll also invite David Rockaby, who I could go on. Right now serves as lecturer and associate director at the BMO lab at the University of Toronto. He's been creating interactive sound and video installations since 1982. His early work, very nervous, and is acknowledged as a pioneering work of interactive art, translating physical gestures into real-time interactive sound environments, which, without getting too far into just everybody's accolades, because of the limits to the time that we have here. Thanks everybody for joining me on stage. I want to use that sort of as a bridge, because we were talking about backstage. Again, weird to think about this metaphor in this virtual space. Talking backstage about how that is a mixed reality practice, like before it was co-opted by Microsoft as a trademarkable property of what mixed reality is, and getting to this question of what are we talking about when we're talking about designing spatially. And we have like a preconceived notion, well, we all share a bit of a notion of it in, like, if we've been at this conference for a few days of a spatial practice, because here we are in a virtual space. But I'm going to turn it to our panel, making sure that you each have the megaphone to ask you what, when you were asked to be on a panel for spatial design, what did you imagine that actually meant? So I'm going to make sure that you're all on air and that you've got the megaphone as you're up here on stage. David, I might start with you first, because I shortchanged a bit of your introduction there, and you've got like just a storied bio there. But you've been working in different aspects of the space for a long time, and now are directing or associate director of the BMO lab, which is looking at this in a different way as well. Like, what are the different ways of defining spatial design that you've led?
Yeah, so I guess the strangest thing for me is that I started doing something that I guess you could call augmented reality with my interactive sound installations like Very Nervous System. And in that case, what it was is not so much spatial design as redefining new behaviors within a given space. So I was often going to a gallery and I'd have to put it in a gallery, or I'd pose it on a street corner by pointing a camera out a window or something. So I was often interposing a new behavior on existing space or something like that. And in that case, the spatial design was actually very pragmatic. And so not even worth going into where you point your camera, how you orient the space, except to consider questions of actually how people move around. And that became very much, I guess, a question that's relevant also in this context, but how do you design an installation, right? I would have defined myself as an installation artist in the 80s and 90s, and there you're an artist who's not working with a sculpture or an image on the wall or a sound, but you're working with the space and redesigning the space to mean something. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what it means when you walk into a space, what you confront, what barriers are there, what do you see and what don't do you see as you enter and as you turn a corner, what's revealed, and how does the order that things are revealed speak to you? So there's kind of a architecture through which meaning was generated. And so even just us coming back from behind there has a certain story to it, that architecture, and that our movement through space and the way it guides us through space says something about that. But I would think about that in the context of the installations I was doing. Since then, I've done other things involving space, using things like the Kinect or the Azure Kinect now to construct, to design behaviors in space sculpturally. So where I can use my phone app, walk into the middle of the space, choose a sound, for example, and then press a button and say, that sound will be here. And then choose another sound and say, okay, that one's going to be on the underside of that sound. And then we're going to build, so I would build a three-dimensional volume of sounds in, say, a 60 by 30-foot space that you explore reaching through it. So that's a very different spatial design sense, which I'm actually changing the character or behavior of things in the space and designing it, again, from a sculptural or installation perspective. And then it's really, then space becomes story in a funny way, like how you encounter sounds, what sounds you encounter in what order changes the narrative you're spinning for yourself as you encounter them. So then it's kind of like sound possibilities as story space that you can move through. So those are some examples of ways I've thought about spatial design.
Yeah. Frank, I might come to you with the same question, coming at this from a very different practice, especially in terms of using like HoloLens and AR and how those are blending two different types of spatialization. Like how do you approach spatial design? How are you thinking about that when you come into this conversation?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting because, you know, when you're here in virtual reality, you're really only dealing with the digital, right? You can sort of make anything any size, and kind of like you kind of have a little bit more you have a little bit more freedom with what you're allowed to create. When you're in augmented reality with something like the HoloLens, if you don't know, it's kind of like this VR headset, but you can still see the real world. So you're designing on top of the existing reality, which makes it a little bit more maybe difficult because you can't just go crazy because you still have to conform to the sort of physics of the real world. But I think a lot of the sort of principles you get with normal sort of set design, and for me as a video game designer, my background is in level design. So you're kind of having those same thoughts in your head. You're thinking, okay, well, what am I going to have my audience looking at any given time, and what are they allowed to touch, and what are they allowed to kind of, can they do anything, or are they just an observer in this world? And a lot of times they are. But my sort of most interesting experience was I got to help with a theater production, and it wasn't really a theater production. It was more like an advertisement, but we got real actors. We had people come in for auditions and wear the HoloLens and see how comfortable they looked with it, which was really interesting. But the most interesting part was when they put the thing on and we were doing the shoots, they weren't just acting out oh, this is what it looks like and this is what it feels like. They were actually using the technology that's on their head to, really sort of interact with what we were filming. So you look at a lot of old movies, I'm a big fan of like Mortal Kombat. I don't know if any Mortal Kombat fans here. You watch the like behind the scenes and you see, Liu Kang, he's like fighting with this lizard that's not really there, right? And he has to pretend like it's real. But here we got to see these actors who have done sort of things like that before, but they were actually doing it. It wasn't like in my head and in their head, and we were, it was real to them, to us, to everyone. So that's like another interesting thing. But at the same time, if you're doing something like a installation or a demonstration, you can't give too much. So one of the sort of biggest takeaways for me was giving people things to play with when you're trying to tell them something. They're not going to listen to you. Right. So that was like one of my early learnings, making all these prototypes in augmented reality HoloLens headset, because people are going to want to reach out and touch things, right? So yeah, you got to find that balance.
Yeah. That's actually a really interesting way to segue into asking this question of Beth, because you just came from a workshop in AltSpace where people were using the tools for devising performance spaces, like doing the customizing scenography within unlimited space, as long as it's available in AltSpace as well. How did that go? And B, how does that relate to like the way that you approach thinking about spatial design and scenography?
Okay, that's a great question. I think it went really well. It was really fantastic to see what was created by more or less new adopters to the technology, and we did put some pretty significant limitations on, but to watch the inventiveness with manipulating space, and we had everything, like there was everything from live piano to curtains that opened, right, without there being animations available to anyone. It was using the tools to create the space, using the tools that existed to create space. We had a promenade piece. So people really got inventive with all the dimensions of the space. So both playing with scale and the lack of physics. And so in terms of approaching spatial design, it becomes really interesting as we hybridize these worlds. And I would say that since I started working in VR, I wonder how much my approach has changed, because we're liberated from physics here. We can do anything. The things that have become really interesting for me too, like Frank mentions, like the gamification of space is something that is requires an enormous amount of consideration, and has started to factor into approaches in spatial design. Like how do you introduce things that you do want interaction with in telling the story of the space without it getting in the way of the story of the space? And so spatial design starts to become this like super multi-layered web-like creature that is far beyond the flats and drops and trucks of yesteryear, which actually for me, the work in VR has opened up my brain a little bit in terms of how to approach those more analog pieces, because there are no limits here. And so I haven't had trouble encompassing that, like including that in my thinking. I haven't had trouble letting go of the analog way, but trying to figure out what can we bring from what we're learning in VR into the analog space becomes really interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no. Finish your thought, because I have a follow-up.
Okay, I was just thinking too about what I witnessed of the groups. For people who weren't there, there were 4
what I called scenographers or scenographers or terraformers who had the ability to construct space, and then they were working with other people in the group, and it was a wide range of new adopters, old adopters, actors, writers, whatevers, people who were makers, and to watch the really incredible liberation of exploration of physical space, and then the placement of the sonic space, and there was actors distributed. Like it was really inspiring, and it was really wonderful to see. So
Yeah. And on the subject of limitations, I think that the question that I have to follow up to this is that I had well, for the second time, both times which have been as a result of this conference, I have run into somebody. Earlier, before this session, as I had helped people get into your workshop, Beth, I had sorry, I gotta pop up. That's one of the awesome things about this space, is that there is a message floating in front of me. So I'm gonna let that happen, and I'm gonna ask this question. So I ran into Ring and got introduced on the main concourse, and like last week, as I was moving through the central room before coming to the presentation rooms, I ran into Liam from Singlefed, and I ran into people, and every other interaction that I've had since March 13th has been pre-planned. Because of the limitations that we have. In what you're saying in terms of thinking about the way that limitations have been opened up, I would open it up to everybody here who's been experiencing these like limitations of the way that we interact with people, and how might that have changed your idea of thinking about in whichever way that you're coming into thinking about space and programming space and the storytelling that goes along with space. How has that changed in this time when we don't really get out much?
I think this is something that so there's a guy named Kent Bai, and he's a VR philosopher, for lack of a better word. He runs this great podcast called Voices of VR, and he and I have talked about this idea of, and he's talked a lot about it on his own too, but this idea of that the hallway conversation, right? Like we've all been to conferences before, and you do that bumping into people, and so in these kinds of social spaces, thinking about the traffic pattern, right? Because as we're porting, we're just making these leaps from one place to another. What can we do then with that spawn point that allows that kind of crossover? How do we guide how do we guide people through without having to take their hand and go, okay, follow me? How do you create those spaces where the hallway conversations happen in a place where you can just zap around? It's really interesting. And having been at several VR conferences in VR now, it's not being thought about. There are very traditional approaches to creation of space, and like actually remaking conference rooms, like which is not exciting.
That was something that really strikes me as we're talking about the absence of limitations. We keep imposing familiar limitations on ourselves, and for obvious reasons, it's familiar, etc. But I find myself wondering, there's a long history in computational arts of before you had NVIDIA and AMD rendering engines, when it was all software to generate sense of space, it was relatively easy for an artist and a programmer to come up with alternative representations of space. And right now, conventional Brunelleschi perspective, 2-point or 3-point perspective is pretty much baked in. And in fact, if you look at medieval art, the artist had the opportunity to say, well, this person's really important, so I'll make them 5 times as big, and I'm going to collapse this space because it's not important. And so I wonder if there are ways for us to explore, given the fact that we have the freedom, can we come up with ways to, like maybe social space should bend around me like gravity, like we have gravitational waves around us. And so when I spawn somewhere, initially everyone's far away from me because I've created a kind of distortion, and then people come to me slowly. Like maybe there's, how can we marry the potentials that this does, which opens everything up, to the fact that we still want to be able to have those encounters. So being able to bump into someone is important, but I was struck actually the other day, the first time I was in this room, and I had to keep maneuvering to be able to see what was going on. I'm going, why do I have to maneuver in a space where anything's possible? Why? Or is that good? Or is that actually a good thing? Is it, it was a funny mixture of experiences. And so there are artists that, for example, went as far as rendering inverse perspective, where everything is smaller the closer it is to you. It's pretty hard to deal with, but it's pretty astounding to challenge the sort of middle of the road reality that we tend to reproduce in these spaces.
To add to that really quickly, so I've been in VR a long time, right? The Oculus, I'm sure you've been in longer, but the Oculus days, the old Oculus. But when I first started getting into it, I used to, I'm a gamer, right? So I like to try all the new sort of experiences. And one of the ones that I tried was a massively multiplayer online RPG. And when I first booted it up and went into the world, everyone has an open mic and everybody's everywhere and you can hear everyone at almost all times. And I hated it. I was like, oh, I don't want to hear these people. It's too much, right? But as the world changed and the social interactions became less and less, I actually find myself gravitating more and more to those experiences. And of course, they've really improved it a lot with things like, the bubble and things like that, so you don't have to get sort of that sensory overload. But I just thought that was interesting, the way that my sort of mindset changed. That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a Jacob Niedzwicki who's part of cohort who is presenting it multiple times throughout the conference. He and I were having a conversation about what the idea with all the streaming, even just streaming performances, all of this is moving online. We've one of the things that we're missing is the audience's ability to ruin a performance, because you don't have that open world anybody could say something at any time sort of thing. And that's one of the conversations over the course of this conference that's happened too, is do we use the mute everybody? I think that the first opening, we're yeah, we're gonna mute everybody so that people could speak, but then it's just everybody's stuck, it gets stuck in a dead silence, so that it's well, let's leave it open and people will sort of navigate that space. I'm also really interested in this idea of it can be anything. For the ToastLab presentation we did last week, we just didn't want to do a PowerPoint, and we did not get so far, and AltSpace does not let you get so far from reality that it's not recognizable as a space that you can occupy. But we decided to do the presentation a different way, where we put it up as banners of 3D object in space, led people around, as opposed to come see a screen, let's go into VR so you can watch me present virtually on a screen, which is an interesting, we're very early in that. There was another thing that we were talking about backstage that I also wanted to bring up in terms of thinking about ownership of space. So there's gonna be a conversation later in the conference about ownership of product or ownership of the types of projects that you make. But we started talking backstage, half of us are on an Oculus. Half of us are not, are on Vive Pros. And we were talking about it because sometimes weird things happen with hands, and the tracking is sort of calibrated to different things, especially there's a couple of people that I've interacted with in this who are on the first Oculus Rift, which uses external trackers. It's very easy for a hand to wander away if it's not if they're calibrated or the occlusion is weird. But we're also so those of us who are on an Oculus are on a Facebook platform, and we're being tracked through space, right? We for it to work, that literally has to happen. We can't participate on an Oculus without allowing Facebook to track our movement. And the Oculus 2, which was announced in various future headsets, they talk about other essentially bio information about our movement and the way that we interact with it, which is meant to improve our experience, but also opens up this question of what's going to happen with that data. So I think that my question for that is we're thinking about like space. What do we think about like the ownership of that space? It's something that's easier to and more obvious perhaps at times when we're in like carbon space, like we know who owns a building maybe, or when there's a clear definition between corporate or public or private land. But now we're in this like weird place where we feel very free. We feel free to move around, but ultimately, to make that happen, we have to give up some of that, like our movement through space and the ability to track the way that we move. What are your thoughts on that? And knowing that those who are, aside from the fact they're being tracked by everybody who's on an Oculus, those who are not on an Oculus might have different thoughts about that, and that you have a little bit more freedom to move. What do you think?
Florian Rotzer, a German theorist, wrote way back in the early days of VR that the dream of sort of infinite interaction and infinite freedom in virtual space comes precisely at the cost of infinite surveillance. You cannot separate the two. And that's a profound, and so there is this extreme contrast between the freedom in theory that one has in this space, but to get that freedom in this spatial non-space or whatever, you have to give away something at the same time. So it's a sort of central paradox in most interactive technologies. The freedoms they open up carry with them these trade-offs, and so questions about privacy, the whole battle between, tracking, the value of tracking data as for machine learning, for example, the value of tracking data for the commercial sort of selling of advertising, etc., versus I guess there's a sort of an Apple-Google model there of privacy. I think these are really fundamentally important questions as you spend more and more time in these spaces, and we have to become really aware, I think, of then the motivations, the motivations that each of the platforms and the operators of the platforms and the people building the software have, and consider the implications somehow. I mean, it's a real mess, really. We have to figure out.
Frank is, without asking you to violate any potential NDAs, knowing that you're working in a more corporate space, how is this has this factored into some of the ways that you're working, or would love to hear your thoughts.
So this, full disclosure, I don't work for any of the big companies, the Facebooks, the Microsoft. I do contract work, so I'm not 100% affiliated with any of them. And it's not something that gets into my sort of day-to-day so much, but I will say that as the hardware manufacturer, they have to kind of add these new features, which are things that people are a little bit concerned about, things like eye tracking and the space tracking. But I can say that at least from the Microsoft perspective that I saw, it wasn't something that that was kind of like a high priority target to gather all this data to use for advertising and things like that. It was more for make the product better, make the hardware better. So while certain things were being collected, it's kind of like the Windows 10, like opt in, opt out. Do you want to send us sort of like your usage data, things like that? This kind of thing, is being collected. But as far as I know, none of these things were being sort of used for, money gaining, things like that. So when I was sort of part of the project, it didn't really enter my sphere. I wasn't, they weren't telling me that these things needed to be done or anything like that. I don't know how much I actually have to add to that conversation. It wasn't really part of my kind of sphere. But I can say that using a Facebook headset, I definitely am sort of cognizant to the concerns, and I feel them too, especially once we start adding things like eye tracking. Then these companies could not only see where my head is looking, but where my eyes are looking, which is another sort of ammunition towards the ad concerns and things like that. So I definitely feel it.
Yeah, there's a different feeling of like some sort of threshold after they announce. Well, with the elimination of the Oculus name moving to like Facebook Connect and sort of like bearing that and like the requirement for the Facebook account and those things like that, where it definitely feels like we've moved on from like a novel display technology, even though like to interact with a lot of these platforms, we were signing up for accounts and things like that, but we've crossed over to like here we're within a specific like corporate ecosystem in which we are a user. Beth, I wanted to give you an opportunity. I didn't mean to stomp on your opportunity to respond to that too.
Not at all. I mean, it's like, how do you fight the many-headed hydra? Like, it's the thing that as a theater maker, that the Oculus and like how many of you are wearing them now, the thing that the Oculus was like this great hopeful piece of technology that finally all our poor theater makers were going to be able to start to engage with these incredible things that I was seeing and that colleagues were making, and knowing that it's always been a Facebook product, like it's always had that coating to it, and now it's really troubling, and so like, I don't know, is it that we make subversive work with it until they shut down all our Oculuses? Like, I don't know. It's troubling, and it's certainly like, it's been identified by people like Jaron Lanier for years, right, how problematic social media is, and it represents, the destruction of what the hope for VR has always been. But maybe, like, and this is why this conference and other conferences similar to it is really encouraging, because maybe there's a way we find to break the system from within a little bit, or subvert it, or make art despite these things, and yeah, I don't know. And we need regulation, right? Like, that's what it comes down to. These monsters need to be regulated so that they don't devour all of our eye tracking. And there now I won't receive any funding from Oculus. So there you go.
It's been recorded. Well, it's been recorded on my headset. So
Right.
like,
Mine...
obviously, if you think your phone's tracking your headset, like, come on, you gotta believe that it is.
But it's true.
There's Andrew Simpree, who is part of Toaster Lab, and I'm not sure if he's in the room right now, but I know he was in your workshop earlier, so he's been in and out through the day. He we've been talking a lot about this recently, and before he came over to spend a lot more, well, he did his PhD and has been doing much more art focused projects. Spent many years at IBM doing design research, and they put a lot of money into developing things in Second Life. And so we've been having this conversation around, like, what was the flexibility of that world versus this world? Like, what are the, like, there's an infamous incident of a Second Life event where people would just like have flying penises come and like the Zoom bomb in virtual space, and that's not something that's possible in this platform as free as we are, where we're sort of still limited to the tools that are given to us. I want to open it up to the audience for conversation, and I know that we could continue to talk about this, but especially people who, you've been in this space and maybe thinking about these things, and they've been weighing on you for the last week in the 3 days that we've been together. Are there questions from the audience and sort of considering any of these ideas of space and how we start to work with space in these different types of virtual environments? I can also add another shark to the room if you'd like me to.
But no floating penises. But
no, that's not. I mean, I guess we could break into Unity and not break into Unity, but we could go over to Unity and design one and put it into a kit, and I can upload it. Like, it's not impossible, but it seems like we don't have.
It's a lot of work.
I feel like there's a better use of time.
Yeah, the shark I can just pull out of an available kit. Okay, so I'm gonna pull open Oh, all right. So now I've turned on hand raises. If you look in your lower right-hand corner, aside from the hand raise emoji that you have, this is a different thing. The lower right. Yes. I'm going to turn on for Two Spirit Trickster here. You're on the air. You're on air, and you should
amazing.
be on.
Oh, there she is.
There you
Hi.
go. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
I wanted to ask, as people who've worked in the gaming industry and in this industry in general for a longer period of time, what your thoughts are in relation to, I guess, like the girl gaming universe, as well as anything that engages in eroticism in general. Like, I've been chatting about stuff like dating sims and the way that they're not necessarily respected, despite that being a huge industry that has its own economy and brings in a lot of money. So you think they would understand that language in general, as well as like what it's like to create work and find audience and space to present work that is more queer, more inclusive, or more sexually liberated?
That's an awesome question.
If I may.
Yeah.
So
yeah, please.
I think the more that we kind of like mature this medium, the more we're going to start seeing much more representation. But I think the kind of, for me at least, I think we've seen a lot of kind of like accessibility options for people that maybe don't want to, be exposed to so many people, like the bubble, the fact that you can make your avatar however you see yourself, I think is a really sort of, is a kind of maybe liberating experience for a lot of people. And as I said before, I think as we mature, we're going to start seeing way more representation as people sort of understand the medium and can kind of like build for it, because a lot of people are making games still in 2 dimensions on a computer screen for people to only consume in that one way. So as things just take time, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that. And I think it was just this weekend I was on Steam and I was just looking, and I found like, I'm a big fan of visual novels, a lot of Japanese visual novels. I play in 2D. I saw a 3D version like in VR where I could actually fully experience that experience. I could have that experience in full 3D, which I thought was really cool, and that's the first time I've ever seen that personally. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, but I might ask you to respond next, because one of the thoughts that occurs to me is like and this relates also to what Frank was just saying in Pandora X, like the idea of avatar as costume and the flexibility there and sort of the relationship there, and talking a little bit about that process. It doesn't quite get as far there as we would like, but there's a lot of like social contract building around the way that character design, especially as it was animated by a live performer as opposed to an NPC, worked in that space. That it seems like there might be still be a lot of flexibility on a platform, like a social platform like this, or even more so on VR Chat where you guys were creating that.
Yeah, and I think that, and so Finding Pandora X was a live VR theater piece that happened at the Venice Film Festival, that had 3 live performers, and then a whole bunch of other performer managers, and then the audience also inhabited an avatar, which became a really interesting piece because that was the chorus, and so everybody was made the same, and was kept pretty gender neutral, was kept, I mean, we were a little bit spooky. It was really evocative of a feeling, and then there was playing with the visions. And it's interesting because I'm reading my son from the Greek myths right now, and all of the the iterations of all of the gods are white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, whereas in Pandora we really played with that and worked with the avatar designer, and so the Hera was pink and Zeus was blue, and started to really dig into what else is possible, like, because you don't have to be the blonde, blue-eyed, white version of these characters, and it and then the ability to shift midstream too, to the ability to inhabit these other embodiments of character becomes a really, really compelling place to start to create from and open up things like different modes of expression and different ideas of sexuality, and in real time. Like it's super fascinating. And I do think, I agree with Frank, I think the more we adopt this and the more we expose people to working with these tools, the more stories we will begin to see, the more modes of expression we will begin to see that explode those previous notions. Like, you know, I've said it a bunch of times, like the VR liberates us from the physics of the carbon world. It also then liberates us from the worldviews that we hold and allows us to actually go inside, like you did in that novel. Like, that's extraordinary. And to go inside and to find those places. So I do think, yes, it will increase. And as we keep playing, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was getting the chance to see Pandora X. I also think about sort of some of the examples of different ways of thinking about space that, David, that you brought up, because there were times at which like characters to change like just their presence, like took up different amounts of space. They changed scale. We as a chorus changed scale, and that allowing people, like, even those simple things allow us to like sort of dissociate from like we are fixed in one form. We can also tell story through those changes that we can control from one character to another, remanifesting into another avatar and making the dramaturgical connections there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find there's an interest. I find myself thinking about how we tend to imagine aliens in science fiction and how much of a failure of imagination that usually is. And when I think about the same thing in terms of our inventing of our avatars, I have the most banal and boring avatar possible because there was not an interesting enough range for me to actually want to pursue further. And yet the possibilities are enormous. But what we run into is the same thing we run into in terms of designing space. To the degree that we have a familiar space, we can leverage all our existing social behaviors. To the degree that our avatars conform to a certain set of expectations, we can code them in very explicit ways, encode ourselves to speak in the language of the normal space. And so there's always this tension between how much do I want to take on all the freedom that's available here to be anything, and what do I lose in terms of any sort of presence in other people's imagination if I do that. And I don't know how we negotiate that. That thing which exists in the real world doesn't disappear here. Just the nature of the constraints is different, right? And so, you know, this is a fairly boring, interesting gathering in terms of the visual presentation of it, although people have put some admirable attention into making their avatars a lot more interesting than mine, and I applaud those. But this is really middle of the road reality that we're experiencing here, and we do that for a reason, and I wonder how we can find new ways of negotiating the space between the familiar communicative space that we already understand the rules of, and being able to jump out of that space completely at times. Like, I don't know, there must be a way, because there's a whole space of potential locked up in the fact that we're still figuring that out.
Yeah.
It's really...
I know that I spent... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I know we're getting close to time, but it's really interesting. In one of the other metaverses that I go into, it's a place called Neos, and in Neos is a lot of really like heavy gamers, and they just build worlds, and it's an incredible place, and nobody has an embodied avatar like this. There are lizards. My closest friend in Neos is a piece of toast with jam, and that's how he's known to everyone. Medra is a piece of toast with jam, and nobody is humanoid in any way, and some people are particles, and it's such an incredible way to engage with them. It feels like being in Star Trek, right? Like Next Generation managed to get beyond the humanoid alien sometimes, and so like there is a giant ball of jelly that changes shape, and that's who we get to talk with, and it's awesome. It's so great.
Yeah,
And
there's
it's really
a lot of early Star Trek that my mother referred to as just everybody had a different skin condition, and then some character design came into it. It was like let's get beyond this. There is a question that has been posed. I'm going to invite that to have in a post session conversation because we're at time. I apologize for that. This has been really a great conversation. I will admit that I spent the first month of being in alt space very much a typically hued person. You would have been able to easily identify me in alt space as a person that you would have met, and then at some point I'm like, there's no reason for me not to be blue. And I was like, well, you won't be able to tell I have fingernails unless I make them orange. So it became more of a design question and moving on there. So thank you. I want to move it into conversation. I think that they gave us like think about all the limitations as we move into the last day of this convening. And we're thinking about the opportunities that you have for here as we've introduced a lot of people to this platform who think about space in this way. Like, also please be thinking about how you can break it, both as a virtualization of physical space and as a corporate space, and as like an embodied space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody asked
I've
me
turned
the name of the
on.